Thank you, Brian. It's good to be here. Good morning. Good morning. One of the things I love about being a part of this church is that we value the work of the Holy Spirit, and when He places that upon you, that takes prominence. And so, our sister Belita, we haven't seen her in a little while, and she just came up to me and she goes, "You know, I wasn't obedient to God last time I was here." And she said that God had told her to pray for us, and that she left and didn't do that, and so she'd like to make that right today and come and have prayer for us. So Belita, talk to God and tell Him what's on your mind, all right?
Oh, thank God, I thought he was talking about me.
Lord, I thank you for this place and every person in it. Thank you for the people that aren't able to be here today, but that have come in the past. You know each person, you know each struggle, and you counsel us to bring all of our burdens to you, and you will give us peace. I thank you for that. I thank you for the mission that was placed on this church years ago to do exactly what they're doing right now. And really, it's your mission. And you exampled that when you were on earth. Thank you for that. Lord, you say to count it all joy when we experience trials, because that produces endurance and patience in us. And the trials seem so hard. I don't know the trials of the different people that are here. I just know that they're there. And there's so much healing that you're doing, and I thank you for that. Whether we can see it or not, I thank you that you are blessing each person here in so many ways. Thank you for the fellowship, and thank you for the experience. Take away my preconceived ideas, my judgmental thoughts, and my critical attitude, and help me see people as you see them. Only you know the hearts. You hear every heart cry. And I thank you that you do. We don't even have to come to you with flowery words. You hear it, whether it's curses like it was in the demoniac the gatherings, who came to you cursing and throwing himself at your feet. And you healed him. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all the examples in the Bible. I know that there's a Bible study going on now called Following the Cloud. The children of Israel rebelled every time they came to a difficult spot. Some of us are at the Red Sea and we're bound by the sea ahead of us and the mountains beside us and the enemy behind us. But you made a way through that sea. Thank you for that. Some of us are at the bitter waters of Mara, but you provided a way to sweeten those waters. Thank you for that. Thank you for knowing the way through the wilderness that each of us are in various times and leading us through it. Thank you for knowing our ways, and thank you for knowing the positive thoughts that you have for us, and thank you. Thank you, Lord, for doing exceedingly abundantly above anything we can think or ask. And Lord, thank you that nothing, absolutely nothing, can separate your love from us, no matter what our response to you is. You still love us incredibly, unconditionally, intimately. You're a hands-on God. Thank you for that. Thank you for your love for every person here. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Amen. Seems today this looks a little bit like a house of prayer, huh?
Feels like it too.
So before we jump into a message that I guess I could call a dysfunctional righteous man, which really that would be me and all the rest of us are highly dysfunctional righteous men. And those things are not in contradiction to each other. God has laid something upon my heart, and again, many years ago, and I don't think I was obedient to it, but maybe it wasn't the right timing, and through our Conquer group that meets on Mondays, and by the way, if you missed it, or you were part of it, and then somehow fell off that wagon, we're going to do it again, okay? I think it's that important. But in that, it came out this last week, there's another need, and so I'm going to try and find some time within the many activities I'm involved with to do what God had asked me to do some time ago, and that was to make a presentation entitled, Hell No.
You've been promising that for a
And so Hell No is coming,
You've been promising
Okay.
that for a long time.
and I think it's time. So anyway, just keep your ears open. We're gonna be moving in that direction, and it's gonna be a good thing. So back to this dysfunctional righteous man. Now, if you have concerns with the fact that we're doing a somewhat expository journey through the Bible for our church services rather than a topical expose, it's because of my friend Jeff. And some time ago, Jeff said, hey, can we just go through the Bible from the beginning to the end? And we started doing that on Thursday nights, and then our schedule changed, and so it seemed like such an important thing that I've decided that's what we're going to do on Sabbath mornings when we get together. So we're going to all go through the Bible together.
Yay!
So we're not starting at Genesis 1:1 where we were before. We're going to pick up where we left off at our last Thursday Bible study course that we're going through, right? And this is not a program, this is nothing, that's just, we're going to open the Bible and we're going to see what God has for us. That's all there is to it. And so I welcome your involvement in the journey, right? So let's pick this up in Genesis chapter 16. If you don't have Bibles and need a Bible, there's a bunch of them up here. I know that's probably not the most convenient place, and no one wants to walk to the front and get a Bible, but hey, they're there. Hey, I love you, brother. There you go, be bold. Genesis chapter 16, verse 1. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, had not been able to hear or to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. I want you to pay attention to the fact that this is an Egyptian servant. It's a part of the story that as we see what occurs later on, just put that up there in your head.
Because where was Moses raised?
Yes, there you go. An Egyptian servant.
What?
Genesis chapter 16, and I just read verse 1. So Sarah said to Abram, the Lord has prevented me from having children. And I say Sarah because I don't like saying Sarai, or whatever. There's a lot of the Hebrew stuff that I just do a mutilation in transliteration English because I do not have Hebrew lips or a Hebrew tongue, and it just doesn't work for me, all right? So I'm going to speak my redneck hillbilly English, and I'll do it in the form that God gave it to me, and I'm not even going to try to do otherwise. All right?
Okay, hillbilly. That's fair enough.
And I was in the sun, so I do have a redneck right now. So it goes on, and it says, Hagar said that God has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her. And Abraham agreed with Sarah's proposal.
Pretty stupid.
Now, I've paid a lot of stupid tax in my life. I'm probably not done doing that. Things seem like a good idea sometimes. Right? What could go wrong with this? I remember so many times in my own life, like I shared with you before, where I thought it was a brilliant idea to ride your bicycle on the roof of the house. It didn't work out very well. There's so many things I can think back in my mind, and I was going, well, everyone else would go, duh, that's for sure. And I knew that it had the potential risk and all of that. But just because no one else was doing it didn't mean that I wouldn't be able to somehow make this thing work.
Besides, you feel it's still fun.
That's right. So, this seems like a no-brainer though. I mean, when you look at the relational things in a marriage, in a family, these are the things that bring in incredible dysfunction. Incredible things happen like this. In my pastorate, in the time that I've been ministering and all of that, I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, I didn't think it would affect anyone else. It was just between me and that person that were doing a thing that wasn't the best, and I didn't know that it was going to cause a big problem. I don't know, did Abraham and Sarah's little expose and their plan here, I suggest to you it's still affecting us.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a whole chapter in Galatians that we might get to where Paul takes this little dysfunctional situation and brings it back to a call for us to live according to the freedom in Jesus Christ. Not because we're not dysfunctional, but especially because we are. If God didn't love dysfunctional people, He wouldn't love anybody.
How about you?
You know, last night in our Bible study, we were talking about the man with the evil spirit that came into the synagogue when Jesus was teaching, and the people were going, what is this new teaching that has such power and authority? Well, they were missing the whole point. And it occurred to me at that moment, and as we were reading the study, that the evil spirit, as he called out Jesus by name, that they had been familiar, who knows how many billions or trillions or whatever years prior to the fall of Lucifer. So that the evil entities that are trying to derail God's work in your life, that are trying to tempt you into another way, making it even seem wise, you may not be familiar with those evil entities, but God knows them by name.
But He's already crushed them.
God knows each of them by name. Let God deal with them. Don't be trying to do it yourself. It is hard.
Wait,
What was going on in this story? Yeah.
tell me about your way of deciphering it, what people should do, if they should just talk to God.
Okay, so you all heard me share the story when our brother Gypsy Larry was here a few weeks ago, and I talked about the day that I met him. And that day I met two possessed people under the bridge down here. And both of them tried to assault my son. The second one tried to strangle him but couldn't touch him. And then he called me by name, sent a messenger to come and ask me to pray for him, asked for me by name, never met him before in my life. And so I go over there, and Gypsy would not be deterred, and he says, I'm coming with you, Pastor. We just met for the first time. I'd known him for 5 minutes.
Thank God.
And I asked the guy, the possessed guy, what his name was, and he says Dominion. And so I asked him if I could pray for him. And I talked to God, not the evil entity in him. Gypsy knew to do the exact same thing, and so he starts screaming at the top of his lungs, "Accept Jesus," I won't do it because it'll hurt your ears. I mean, he was at the top of his lungs. "Accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and be free of the bondage." And he just started screaming, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," for like 20 minutes we're out there. And I'm praying over here in a less Pentecostal way. and Gypsy's just all Pentecostal on this thing.
Oh, yeah, I can hear him now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Agent Trump. Yeah.
My ears were green.
And the guy's body was convulsing and flipping out and all of that, right?
It's a true story?
True story.
Yes.
True,
Happened right out here in the park.
very true.
On the
There are
bridge.
witnesses.
There was about 300 people under there when it happened.
Wow.
I'm one of the witnesses.
And
It's creeped out.
after about 20 minutes, the guy became very calm and at peace. And I said, "Gypsy, this man has something to say." And he goes, "Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and he has set me free." He was a different man. Not once did we talk to the evil in him.
It was a miracle.
Don't have a conversation with evil. It did not work out well for Adam and Eve.
Over Barack Obama or anybody else who's trying.
If they had said, when the serpent started talking to them, if they had said, "We're going to turn and have the conversation with God and say, hey, this serpent is saying things about God. How about I ask God about the things about God?"
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
If Abraham and Sarah had said, "Hey, rather than us talking to whatever this temptation is for us to take this into our own hands, how about if we talk to God about the promise that he gave us?"
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Rather than a committee meeting,
Right. That's the, now you gotta use.
how about we talk to God about stuff? Because all the times I see the dysfunction arise in the Bible is because people decided to either speak to the evil or to devise their own plan, which is subject to the sin nature, deceiving our own selves. But if we would just go straight to the source, it would eliminate a whole lot of trouble.
No one's half the battle.
Yes. We'll be talking to evil entities, guys.
That right there, yeah.
Just don't be doing it. You talk to God,
Yeah, because they only
the
drive.
Lord of all. He knows the evil entities by name. He created them.
Yes.
He didn't create the evil in them, but he created them. And when they rebelled, he knew them by name. He knew every one of the third of the angels that left heaven. He knows them well. You don't.
We're supposed to be doing greater things in him now.
That's right.
Because there's so much of that in this city that needs to be quenched.
That's right. Brother,
What is it, you know that story you just said,
Yeah.
about however many left, there?
Mhm.
Where can I find that? Like, where can I read that about, you know?
well, if you stay here, we're going to get to that, and we're going to chat about that. So it speaks about it in Revelation.
I don't like that.
The Revelation is awesome. It's all about Jesus, man. Serious, hang out.
Have to get past.
It's all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. 100% of it, Donna.
I want to say thank you
Well, thank
for
you.
sharing that.
Yeah. So we can't go through an expose or an expository journey of the Bible without touching all of these things. See what's awesome about that? And it's Jeff's fault again. I'm going to make sure that you always know that again and again. But when you do an expose of the Bible, you can't read one story without it touching another, because there's only one purpose in the book, and that is for you to live in freedom as a dysfunctional righteous person. Not that you need to be dysfunctional, but you were dysfunctional when you were free. And now one day, your dysfunction is gone, your sin nature will be removed from you, and you will be like him, and therefore you'll recognize him as he is, it says in 1 John 3. Yeah. Powerful stuff. Abraham's just like you. Just like I. Just like you. Sarah's just like you. Hagar, just like, in fact, her name means, Hagar's name has two different assumptions in it. One means that to be led away. The other one means to be pressed into service. Interesting. So to be led away and pressed into service, she was from Egypt, and she's there with Abraham, a servant of Hagar. Yeah. Interesting. You know, how many times have we read this story through the eyes of Hagar rather than through the eyes of Sarah and Abraham? How would you like to be Hagar? Hagar's there doing her thing. She's the servant. She's doing as she's told. The ones who have had her serving in their household devise a plan. And they say, hey, Hagar, here's our plan. You're our servant. This is what's going to happen. Imagine being her. We talk about how terrible this thing is with Hagar and with Ishmael and all of that. The thing isn't so terrible about Hagar and Ishmael as it is about the entire dysfunction of the story, especially those who were promised and set aside by God. And we can do the same thing.
We usually do.
It happens. This story has so many different parts to it. It's not a story of condemnation, it's a story of the goodness of God in spite of us harming ourselves. In fact, the entire book is the story of, in spite of what happened with Adam and Eve, while I was hostile to God, He sent His Son to die and shed His blood for me, the enemy of God. It's kind of dysfunctional to be the enemy of God. That's my nature. So, this whole thing happened. Abraham and Hagar hooked up. Verse 5. There's a realization that Hagar is pregnant, and Sarah says to Abraham, "This is all your fault." Yeah, it says this. So remember, it was Sarah that says to Abraham, "The Lord," in verse 2, "prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant." And now verse 5, just 3 verses later, then Sarah said to Abraham, "This is all your fault."
You see what happened?
Does this mimic the story of the fall of Adam and Eve at all?
It's the same.
It was that woman you gave me that made me do it. It was that serpent that you created that made me do it. I'm here to tell you,
It's you.
It's you.
this is something that we must take into our own lives. You are responsible for you. God can't make you do anything, or He violates His own character. The devil can't make you do anything because you were given free will by God.
Does God do the same thing as the devil, but opposite, like the deceiving? Does He go, here, there's 5,000 carrots?
It says the Bible does not deceive, nor is He deceived.
There you go, thank you.
Amen.
Amen, yeah.
And that's hallelujah.
Becoming poppy again.
Yeah, that's right. You're doing all right, brother.
I'm glad he's here every week.
I'm glad he's here too. I'm glad all of you are here. I love my brothers and
I'm
sisters.
glad to be here.
Simona tells me not to mess with the mic, but I have to because it falls off my ear. So sorry, honey. I am listening to you. I'm having a practical response.
I have something to say.
Yeah,
See, I didn't know I was going to make it here today, because I just got out of jail,
yeah,
and I didn't know which way to walk.
yeah.
I could have walked to Kaiser, I could have walked, I decided to walk here.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, I don't know about
Yay.
rugby.
Tell me why.
Cause I was supposed to see my daughter,
Yeah,
and I'm not supposed to, so.
okay.
But it was birthday, you know what I mean? It was my choice and I chose.
Well, we're selfishly, I'm glad you're here.
So I think-
Yes, we're glad to.
Now I gotta work on it in a good way to get to see it without having to go and get the trouble, you know what I mean?
Amen.
And the Concord group on Monday, hang in there. We're gonna do it again. You can jump right back in, all right? Promise. Yeah. And those of you that missed it for whatever
I
reasons,
missed it
and
too.
you were upset with yourself,
Yes,
don't be upset with yourself.
yes.
That's not God's way.
No worries.
So let it be something that motivates you, but don't be mad at yourself. Right? God loves you no matter what.
Amen.
Even with my beard?
Yeah, even with your beard, man. Even when I get really scroungy looking and I don't shave my neck and it looks really bad. Yeah, you guys still love me. I know it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it goes on in the story here. And it says, I put my servant into your arms, and now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. It's your fault. The Lord will show you who's wrong, you or me.
That's true.
Yeah, that was a true statement. What drama, man.
That's so direct, I like that.
Right? We sing that song when we're kids, some of us anyway that grew up in the Christian community. Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. Right? So let's just praise the Lord. We're talking about your dad here.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, essentially.
Amen.
So, you know, sometimes we say we came from dysfunctional families, and join the club. Join the club. So did Jesus. Absolutely done.
We put the fun in dysfunctional in this generation.
That's a positive way of thinking about it. Verse 6, Abraham replied, look, she is your servant, so deal with her as you see fit. I'm handing it off, man. And Sarah treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. Come on, picture this. It's your fault. I'm not dealing with it. You care for her. We're going to fight. Sound like anything you've
Sound
seen?
familiar?
We've watched it on the sidewalk out here. We've seen it inside here that we've asked it to go outside.
Yes, yes.
Participated in it.
Participated? Shh, Jeff, don't talk about that. Yeah. You're done with that stuff, right?
Yes.
Yes, you are. By the way, this gentleman, and where's Wayne? Wayne and Crystal are getting baptized next Saturday. If anybody else feels so inclined, we're going to get some vans and we're going to go up to the Santiam River and get into the 40-degree water. And we're going to have a baptism. So, anyway. Yeah.
I will watch. I'll be back.
So, verse 7, the angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness along the road to Shur. I want to tell you about Shur. In Exodus chapter 15, somewhere in verse 20-ish, 1, 22, somewhere in there, Israel had just come out of Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea. They cross over and they come to the desert of Shur. And Shur actually means fortress or wall. And so, when you read some of the ancient history, there's many historians that say that Egypt had taken the natural formation of the mountain range there and added to it to create a protective wall so that those from the northeast and Persia could not come down and cause them any trouble. And so they enter into this place called the fortress, and there was no water. And so they travel 3 days south and they come to the bitter pools. It's funny you mentioned that in your prayer.
Bitter
Yeah.
balls.
They come down and they come to the bitter pools and God makes the water sweet. He's always gonna sweeten your pool if you ask him.
But first you said
Oh,
they were going
yeah.
to water.
Everything.
Right,
So they got there and they spent 3 days in the wilderness and found the water.
that's right. Yeah.
That's
So this wall, as expressed, is 1,500 furlongs, or about 100 and, just under 200 miles or something like that.
That's, yeah.
So, Hagar's heading to this place where there's bitter water and a fortress that has no water. Remember, she's Egyptian, and this is Egyptian territory. She's going back to Egypt. I've been a servant here with Abram and Sarah, and they've been good to me, but something happened. I'm going back. I'm running. I'm going to go to Egypt.
Me too.
That happens a lot with Christians, right? Man, the people in the bar treated me nicer than those in church. Yeah. Hopefully that's not true here at Inside Out, but we're not perfect either, right? The people in the gang were nicer to me than the church, right?
I started coming here, I got with a fire in me, and I get more, they demand more of me, I like that.
That's good, man.
I do.
Accountability, right?
There you go. Something, I don't know what it is yet. I like it though.
Awesome. She's going back to Egypt. It's better than hanging out with this rich guy. Abraham was rich.
So is it okay to fall and get back up?
The Bible says the righteous fall, but they don't stay down, they get back up. It's exactly what happens,
It also
brother.
says that God holds our hand and lifts us up into the fall.
Yeah. In Hebrews, it says, take these feeble and weak hands and get back up.
Because I don't know the purpose is, I just keep on falling.
Oh, you want to know your purpose, he's going to show you.
Just remember that a success
Careful what
is
you
a
ask for,
person
right?
that gets
That's right.
back up.
That scares me.
Success is failure turned inside out.
Yeah.
So lots of doubt.
The first part, say it.
So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. That's the last 2 lines of the poem called Don't Quit.
Awesome. That's
Beautiful.
good. That's good.
And when the enemy comes on all sides, don't quit.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's
well,
right.
and there's a verse in the Bible that says, when the enemy comes in
Amen.
like a flood, the Lord raises a standard against him.
And in his storm, we will find him.
That's right. So, verse 8, she's out there and the angel said to her, Hagar, Sarah's servant, where have you come from? Where are you going? Does that sound a little bit like Adam and Eve? Like, what are you guys doing? Well, we hid because we were afraid. Why? Because we were naked. Who told you? Like, who told you that? I'm God. I'm not real concerned about your nakedness. That's not what I'm after. Right? So the angel just has this conversation. Where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah, she replied. Listen to this. Turn to your mistress and submit to her authority. You talk about God's plan in your life. See, a lot of people think about God's plan as meaning that it's going to be really pleasant. It's Pleasantville. Right? Like the black and white movie, but in this one city, everything's color. Like the rest of the world is black and white, and then these one group of people live in Pleasantville where there's color.
Like Coming to America.
I guess. I grew up here, so that's all I know. But
Why do you think I like the Twilight?
so we think somehow in our mind that when we get baptized, brother, the enemy's after you right now because you have planted your flag. Wayne, the enemy is after you right now.
I
know, I just went through Broward flu spotted bite, 3 days of pneumonia and IV, antibiotics.
Yeah. Crystal,
Focus on him.
wherever Crystal.
Yeah.
The enemy is after
It's
her.
Crystal.
It's not the fact that we choose God and then all of a sudden we get, a Lamborghini and a mansion and a house full of people serving us.
You need to go through
That often means that you're going to get a rougher road. So don't judge your road to determine whether God is in your life or not. When I read the people that had the greatest experiences with God, they went through it. So don't judge God by whether you're having a pleasant experience or not. He didn't promise pleasant. He said you're going to have trouble, and because of me you will be hated. That's what he promised.
Hated and ridiculed.
But I will never leave you or forsake you even to the end of the age. Wouldn't you rather go through hell, figuratively,
To get to heaven.
with God, than to live in Pleasantville without him?
These raised in the army, we need to learn these things.
Especially when you
Yeah,
realize.
you guys are the army, right?
Amen, we're warriors.
I had a pastor,
Every night.
I shared this last night, so those that were here, forgive me for it, but I think since you bring that up, I shared this with the pastor. I said, God is seeing you as a soldier. And I told him about the training that God had given me, not the religious entity, but the training that God gave me immediately as I came into ministry. I dealt with demonic stuff. He put me in amongst gang members. And he put me in the face of all kinds of things that I dreaded the idea of ever coming in contact with. Everything that I had told God I didn't want to have part of ministry, he made sure I had as part of my ministry.
That's because you told him you didn't have to.
And 1 second, brother. And so this pastor, he's a fairly new pastor. He's been pastoring about 2 years. And he started telling me about the demons that are coming and harassing him, both in visual, physical form and not so, and it's ongoing day in and day out. And he's terrified about talking to other pastors or to other leaders because they're going to think that he's evil somehow because he's the target of the enemy.
No, he's not.
And so we chatted for a couple hours about that, and I said, man, praise the Lord that you're having this. I said, he has chosen you as a warrior. That he's trusted you with being able to see beyond a veil that others have been veiled because they're not quite ready to handle what they see yet.
Amen.
I said, he's raising you up as a strong warrior. This doesn't mean you've done something wrong or you're on the wrong path. It means that he's allowing you to experience some fire. Why is it taboo for us to talk about the enemy attacking us? Why would that be taboo, thinking that, oh, well, I must be evil because evil came at me. Then Jesus must be evil because he was tempted in the wilderness for 40 days. Come on, it's baloney.
There's always someone that wants to judge.
That's the enemy. He tries to
Exactly
make
what I-
your